Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of Grow Up, Level Up, the podcast where I talk to folks about the fun and games that help them grow up and the fun and games they choose to participate in today. Today's guest is someone who is actually one of the very first followers of Grow Up, Level Up way back when I started it. They are a teacher, but now they have a also cool job working with kids and youth in the video game realm. And I would like to welcome Ryan O'Callahan.
How's it going? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome all the way from New York. So this is our West Coast East Coast collaboration
There
episode.
we go.
No, that's awesome. So in 60 seconds, Ryan, can
Okay.
you maybe introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a 7-year veteran middle school English teacher. Last year was my last year doing it because now I am the executive director for the New York Videogame Critics Circle. We are a video game writing nonprofit. We do writing workshops, mentorships, internships, and all of that surrounds journalism and narrative writing in video games. We also sprinkle a little bit of poetry in there. We try to cover all the bases. And then we work primarily in New York City. And we do after school programming, which is where I met the organization as a teacher. But we also work with shelters and other community organizations to spread that awareness and the education.
That's amazing. That like that working with kids and youth is almost like a thankless job.
Well,
So that's amazing that you're also doing that and giving them life skills that they can bring into like all types of work.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get into like the nitty gritty of what you do at NYVGCC and maybe a little bit about your history in games and being a teacher, just a little bit of housekeeping for you audience out there. Make sure to follow us on all our socials at Grow Up Level Up, as well as my personal socials at SamsonXP. We do have a Discord server, so if you are interested in chatting with other folks in our community, definitely click that Discord link in the description below. And if you enjoyed what you're about to listen to today or enjoy supporting us, please consider subscribing or following on your podcast, as well as hit the bell icon. I know that is apparently good for SEO. And don't forget to check out some of our other shows. In this past month, we've launched 2 more shows. One is called Yugulu, or You Grow Up Level Up. It's a show about some of the life skills that you can take into your professional life or university life. Stuff like managing time. How does your morning look? How does your night routine look? Me and my friend Samantha, we kind of just chat about what worked for us, what didn't work for us. So if that's something you're interested in, check out Yugulu, as well as Cheers Love, Overwatch League fan retrospective podcast that I'm just kind of doing for fun. That'll come out once in a while. That's just talking about the Overwatch League and what that meant to us as fans. And now that it's over, what do we hope for the future of Overwatch esports? That being said, hopping back to our conversation with Ryan, a question I like to ask every guest is, what are you drinking today for the podcast?
So because I'm just constantly working from home, I've got a nice room temp cup of coffee, just black coffee in a china mug. Nothing too exciting.
Black coffee enjoyer.
Yeah, too much cream and sugar just kills me.
Yeah, fair enough. I always knew too much cream and sugar was not that good for you, so I kind of started drinking black coffee as well,
Uh-huh.
in a Starbucks mug, since I was like 18, and I just never stopped drinking black coffee.
Yeah, when I was teaching, there was like a bodega around the corner, and like they knew I would walk in the door, they'd have it ready to go. But since then, now like I can only drink Cafe Bustelo. It's like
Oh wow,
it's like espresso grade, but like Spanish coffee that is just like now in my veins, and I'm drinking one every day. So
that is fancy. Is that like one you have to do a fancy pour over,
no, it's
or just
really not
Keurig?
fancy. It's like you can get like a Folgers sized, like big yellow plastic bin at
uh,
your grocery store. It's
oh,
just what I've become accustomed to after all those years picking up coffee there.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, when I worked at a school once, and they had just coffee flowing every day, so that was my most coffee,
Well,
9 to 5. That's all I drank. Took one on the way home too.
yeah, we didn't. We
More
had
coffee
like
than
a
water.
Keurig in the office, which
Yeah.
like took forever and wasn't helpful to anybody. So
Hmm.
I would just go for a walk and get it somewhere else just to,
Yeah.
save the time.
Fair enough. And the other question I like to ask every guest is, what are your top three video games of all time?
I've been waiting my whole life to have this conversation
All
with someone
right.
who wants to listen. I'm one of those people where like I have an ongoing list that every time I finish a game, it gets added to the list, and like I don't know, I love a listicle. But what I will say as a caveat is like I have a feeling that by the end of this year, this list will change. Baldur's Gate is changing my life,
Oh yeah.
and it may very well crack the top three, but for me, and I'm putting these in order. I've heard other guests be like, "Oh, well, we won't talk. We're talking in order today." Um,
Hmm.
so, in reverse order, Last of Us Part Two is one of my favorite stories. Just like period, not like in games, but just overall. I think it did a wonderful job of really putting someone into that world and facing the consequences of the actions of the first game and really building that story in a way that I think a lot of sequels, especially in games, don't handle. I mean, it's a very controversial game just because a lot of people are, upset with what happens to certain characters. I'll try not to spoil anything, but I
Hmm.
think it does a really great job of looking at just like like how you I guess revenge is the word I'm looking for, but like how you react to that kind of emotion and how these three different characters ultimately have a very similar setup, but how their stories branch off is very different. And I really love the way that they built that out. Um, so yeah, that one didn't expect to love it, but I really did.
Hmm.
And then number two for me is Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Huge Zelda fan, favorite franchise. You can probably see a bunch of Zelda figurines in a case
Oh yeah.
behind me.
Yeah.
I've got a full sleeve of Legend of Zelda tattoos.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, my parents hate it, but yeah, it's always been a game that I love. Like I grew up playing it. My parents played the original ones when I was like still like in the womb, so it's like really
Oh
just part of
wow.
my life.
It's in your
Um,
blood. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in more ways than another now with all the tattoos, but
Right.
the thing that I always loved about Wind Waker on two separate fronts is I think it's the game that actually built a narrative, and this is like a trend for me. Like in games, narrative is so big. Where most Zelda games are like Link is the hero, and it's his destiny to be the hero, and that's why we're going on this journey because he will save a princess. And that narrative felt really tired, and it's hard to connect to that as a kid or even as an adult. But what Wind Waker did that I really loved was that like the story is about finding your sister, and like it opens
Mm.
with your sister's taken by the bird. You're gonna go. You're gonna save your sister, and then when you learn about what's happening in the world around you, you choose to become the hero. Where it's not just so like, well, Link's the hero, princess is gone. Here comes the game. You actually, with the character, learn what's happening in your world, and then go from that. And
Mm.
then just I think graphically, and I remember at the time, like all my friends were getting Xboxes and they were making fun of me for having a GameCube. And but I think the joke's on them because what GameCube and specifically Wind Waker did really well is they kind of just built a fidelity that worked like across an entire game where there's just consistency. So like I remember like at that time everyone's like, oh, like look at how great GTA Vice City looks. And like, well, like stand next to a tree. It's just like two circles like connected at a cross point. But if you
Yeah.
look at Wind Waker and the way that they built their character models, they built their levels, the way they build the water and how the water moves and how the wind moves through the air, all of that's consistent and it holds up even on the GameCube version if you play it today. And like I'm constantly, I've always been an advocate for that one, so that's always up
Mhm.
there. But my number one game is Final Fantasy X. Um,
Oh.
I love it. I love a turn based fighting system, so like that always was huge for me. But I remember I would wake up really early on a Saturday morning to play it because if my brother woke up and he would like help me through a certain part of the game, he would then finish the game and make me watch it. So like I would play it in secret without him knowing so I could keep getting through it.
Mhm.
But I really fell in love just with that cast of characters and the way that they build out this narrative, and ironically, it's kind of similar to what I love about Last of Us 2, is you have your two main characters, Tidus and Yuna, have a very similar background where they have fathers who are really famous for a reason. They're living in their shadow, trying to follow in the footsteps, but how those two characters put that into the world is very different. And then your villain, Seymour, is also in that exact same scenario, but you see him do it in that negative way, and how all those stories come together. And just that whole plot of like, how do you deal with losing faith and losing trust in, this world that's lying around you. Like I was maybe like 11 or 12, and like that was like the first time I really felt impacted by a story and felt
Mm.
connected to it in what I was seeing in the world around me. So that's like always going to be a game that really holds a special place for me. So
Wow, that's amazing. That's a pretty cool list. It's different genres of games, technically, but
yeah,
the underlying theme is like lots of story,
yeah,
and sorry, lots of story, and also like, yeah, the narrative. I guess is
mhm.
has to be really good. That's cool. I can see why Baldur's Gate 3 is good. Might
it,
crack your top three there.
it's really blowing my mind because it does this thing that like that I only really ever saw in Witcher 3, which is like every single side quest and interaction feels like it's still building towards that larger story. Whereas
Mhm,
like you play something where like as much as I loved the new Zelda, like you want me to do like a side quest that really doesn't have to do with what's happening in the world around. Like I'm just helping you like hold a sign up or whatever like silly thing it has. But Baldur's Gate, no matter what I do, I feel connected to every single side quest that I've done. And it's a tough
totally.
game, but I'm learning.
No, totally. I am also slowly going through Baldur's Gate 3 just because I'm enjoying like every little interaction so much. I
Mhm.
feel no need to go to the next big story step. I just
Yeah.
enjoy like talking to the characters more or less, and seeing what the heck is going on with them, which is like, I'm a narrative game guy as well,
Mhm.
but I never do the side quest stuff. I just want to see
Right.
the main story, but Baldur's Gate does it so well where it's all one in the same.
And it rewards you for like trying things out, like in a way that I remember in like when you first got Breath of the Wild, it was like, oh, like I wonder if this mechanic can connect to this mechanic and this will work. And it was like, oh wow, it is. Like I can light
Mhm.
thing on fire. But like Baldur's Gate 2, it's like, oh, I can speak to animals. And it's like, oh, there's like these spiders that look like they're not like too happy to be like in this camp. Like, let me talk to the spiders. And like suddenly I'm running a spider uprising that and they're
Yeah.
helping me in the main
Yeah.
quest. And I'm like, this is insane. This is so well thought through.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or even like, I wonder if I can take this, and you just take it, and then
Mhm.
a crazy scenario happens. You're suddenly fighting like 10 people. You're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't have done that," but curiosity killed the cat.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love your top 3. Honorary
Much
mention to Baldur's
appreciated.
Gate 3. That's on my running for game of the year this year too,
Yeah.
maybe of the decade, yeah. Um, so moving on to talking about NYVGCC.
Hmm.
Uh, you kind of briefly touched on it in your intro, but could you maybe expand on what it is, where it came from, what's the goal of NYVGCC?
Yeah. So the overall goal is to provide education and awareness for writers and writing in the game industry. Um, I taught, as I said, like middle school English. And whenever I talk to kids about games, it was a really great way for me to build relationships. But most of them didn't realize it could be a career goal. So even just creating that idea and that understanding of like, you as a writer can do so many different things, in the games industry or in many other industries. But to really make it clear, like how you can be involved in something you love as a career, it doesn't mean you have to be, a programmer. It doesn't mean you have to be like a games tester to get your foot in the door. The games industry is looking for professionals from all over the place, but it's a matter of how you market yourself and connect to whatever that project is. So with that, and what we're doing, right, we provide, as I said earlier, we do workshops. We then also mentor a lot of students, and we have students who become our interns. So we have interns who have been with us since essentially the inception of it, where they were interns while they were in high school when we first met them, and now they're going through college and they're continuing to work with us. We also provide different scholarship opportunities based on some competitions we have in classes. So we're giving students as young as 13 these opportunities to start building towards this pathway into a job and a college career and all these different ways that we can connect them. We work with different journalists throughout New York City and really across the world if they're able to connect with us, and then other members of the games industry. So a couple of years back, Reggie Fils-Aimé, former president of Nintendo, joined our board of directors.
Wow.
So yeah, so he connected with my class while we were working there. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to travel between some COVID stuff and then just distance as well. But we got to like interview him on like Zoom meetings and really like learn from him. And he does a really great job of connecting and giving back to our communities. We just had a group of interns who went to a press event with Stephen Totillo at Axios.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, he brought a couple of our interns with him and then mentored them going around and doing interviews at this Nintendo press event. And we just put it up on our website, NYVGCC.com. And they just did, a wonderful job where it's students from 14 to about, I think, 21 who were involved in going through that event. So that's been really fun. But yeah, I mean, our goal is to just, continue to do that, to educate, to teach more about that, and then hopefully bring kids towards a career, whether that's through different scholarship opportunities, internship opportunities, and just other connections that we at the organization have. If it's a good fit for our students, we really advocate for them.
That's amazing. So it's not just like middle school and high school. It's a little bit beyond that as well. They become your interns or your staff writers, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we don't like that thing where it's like, all right, like you can work with us for 3 months and then you'll learn a little bit and then we never speak to you again. Like we really are about building that kind of familial sort of relationship with our interns and really advocate for them.
That's awesome. So how big is your team at NY VGCC?
So we have about 30 like professional journalist writers who are volunteers, and then they work with us on the award side. So we also do the New York Game Awards. So they really work in helping us with the nominations and getting all of that information set up as well. But they also come in and teach some of our classes. They help with editing the student work on the website. So they're just really incredible people who are giving back to that community. And then as far as interns, we have right now about 20 interns, ranging from right now freshmen in high school up until seniors in college.
Mhm.
And the really exciting thing about that actually is three of our newest I taught middle school. So I had them for seventh and eighth grade. So now they're like they're essentially our staff writers. So I
Wow.
still get the privilege of going through and editing their papers, giving them that
Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, so we've got about in that sense about 50, and then it's myself, and then our president and founder Harold Goldberg, and then our board of directors, who then helps with running the organization.
That's awesome. And you guys are nonprofit, like
Yes,
this is just for the community. That's
yes.
amazing. Yeah. That's when I first met you and then looked up what you do, I was personally like very inspired because I do remember one of the first times in middle school that I found like, oh, this games doesn't have to be just for fun.
Hmm.
It is like something you can write. It was a tutor where she told me to write a review on Smash Bros. Brawl,
Nice.
and that kind of like core memory mind as well. It's
Oh
like,
my
oh,
god.
these games I can actually put my opinion out there. It's not just a waste of time with me and my brothers. It's a piece of art that can be commented on and looked up upon.
Yeah, I mean, just like from like a writing, just like media standpoint, like Smash Brothers Brawl, I think was like from a PR perspective of like whoever worked on their team, like hyping people up for that game coming out. Like I remember being in my high school library and I think it was every week or no, every
Oh
day,
yeah,
they would update the website with a new article
yes,
and it might be like new item day. And then one day, like I'd be in the library, like Wario's in this. And
Yeah,
like you have
Sonic's
all
in
these
this,
big
like
moments. It was really, really cool how they did that.
yeah, that was a really, unique kind of marketing push, that's yeah, that's really interesting. I actually forgot about that until you brought that up. That was a
Yeah,
big
because
part of
nowadays
it.
it's like we wait for like a Nintendo Direct and then everyone's speculating, will something happen? But
Yeah.
they built a plan and they really stuck with that. And I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, that was really cool. I don't know if it would work anymore nowadays because of all the leaks and everyone's just
Yeah,
way more
someone would be
connected.
in the code and be like, well, they've got these 10 scheduled for the next few weeks
Yeah.
now. Yeah, they probably ruin it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Going back to, NYVGCC, like, how'd you get end up there? You were a middle school teacher before.
Uh-huh.
This is still in that kinda education type of work, but how did you go from being a teacher to now being an executive director?
So, I mean, it started with I mean, I'm a lifelong fan of games and I always tried to find ways to right, bring that passion and that excitement into what I was doing at work. So, my administration didn't love that idea, but I would then like, pepper in like a video game review as like the nonfiction thing that we're analyzing as a class, and do little things like that. And then once we hit the pandemic, we were working from home, and one thing that we were kind of charged with doing because as teachers with a full plate, we didn't have anything else better to do. But like we were given like students that we were in charge of, so then we would try to schedule check-ins, and most of the kids never showed up or never did, and they were really struggling at home. And I
Mhm.
ended up connecting with one of my students, and we ended up having to have this like talk where it was like, okay, like, I will talk to you about video games, but we have to spend 20 minutes talking about your schoolwork and setting up a plan for you to do it. And then we would talk about like our playthroughs of Stardew Valley. And she'd be like, like I married this character. I was like, oh, no way. So did I. That's so strange.
That's awesome.
But we built these really cool relationships. And then I would talk to other teachers, and teachers were complaining, like, oh, the kids aren't getting their work done. They're too busy playing games. They're playing Fortnite when they should be. And then, I'm like listening, and then in my head, I'm like, well, I am also probably playing Fortnite when I should be grading their papers right now, but we're all going through a really hard time. And this is
Yeah, it
how
was a really tough time.
how they're trying to express themselves. So the more that I heard those stories, the more I was like, okay, I want to try to find the positive spin for that, and try to bring that to my kids, because there were a lot of kids who were talking to me about games, not about school. So I was like, how can I kind of bring these things together? And then we got to the point where we were driving back into the city. We had like 10 kids in classroom and 20 of them at home. That was a nightmare too.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just listening to so many podcasts while driving, and I found just on like a cursory search, our founder, Harold Goldberg, did a podcast short series with Reggie. I think it was around right when he enjoyed our board of directors, but they were just, interviewing people in the games industry, talking about this organization and what they did. And I was like, wow, this is such a cool organization. They're teaching with video games in the Bronx. I should do stuff like that. I teach in the Bronx. And like a week went by, and I was like, why aren't you reaching out to these people? Like you meet the criteria, you teach in the area that they serve. Like, worst thing that could happen is someone says no. So I reached out, and then it ended up being like a year-long conversation because of different budgetary things and waiting for the pandemic to end and figuring out schedules and timelines. But eventually they came into my classroom, and I was as eager as any of the kids were. So I was helping with planning, I was helping with the classroom management, I was participating in all the events. So I just got really close with the people running it, and I got to know Harold really well. And then last year at the New York Game Awards, I won their Teacher of the Year award. So
Nice.
yeah, it was really
Congrats.
exciting. I got to go to
Yeah.
this big event, met Reggie in person, had a glass of wine with
Damn,
him and a
wow.
conversation. It
Wow.
was crazy. And
That's
I
cool.
was like, wow, nothing will ever get better than this. And then a few weeks later, I was talking with Harold, and he was talking about, how they're really working to expand the Critics Circle. And part of that was, working on staffing and having an executive director who can help organize the materials, work with the schools, and then, work on also expanding fundraising, because, if you want to expand, you need more money to do it. Um, and he was like, if you're interested, you should really apply. And I was like, okay, like this is sounding like the end of like Willy Wonka. Like, I don't understand like why you think I'm qualified for this. But then, the more that I sat on it and I thought about it, I was like, it's everything that I care about. I got into teaching because I want to help people. I want to share my passion and expand on that. And this is an opportunity to do that on a much bigger level. And try out some different muscles and how I can do that. So I applied and waited, and allegedly there were 250 other applicants. So I was like, well,
Wow.
this isn't going to work out. And then eventually they were like, we've whittled it down to two. We'll let you know within, a week. And suddenly I'm like sitting on a bus during field day, getting an email being like, we want you to do it. And I was like, I don't know how. Okay,
Wow.
this is crazy. Don't freak out in front of the children right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been with them now since July. Um, and we've just been, pushing, knocking on all the doors to see anyone who wants to, help sponsor and donate and do all those things. And now we're working on setting up the New York Game Awards, which will be January 16th this year.
Hey everybody, Samson from the future here. I just want to give a quick update on the New York Game Awards mentioned here. It's actually going to be on January 23rd, 2024, not the date that was just mentioned. So January 23rd, 2024. All right, now back to the episode.
So I'm learning a lot more about event planning because
Mhm.
my experience is like doing a spelling bee. So now we're taking it to the next level,
Yeah,
going this
permission
way.
slips, field trips. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No,
That's
it's
amazing.
exciting.
That's great. Yeah. That's amazing. Congrats to you. That seems like you are the best fit for the job.
I
You're passionate
appreciate it.
about it. Yeah. So if somebody wants to get involved with you or maybe like donate to you or become a sponsor or anything of that, how can people best reach out to you and your organization?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to nygamecritics.com, um, you can find all the info there. We have all these different tabs. Like I'm explaining a website, like people don't know what a website is. I spent my first big project was working on the redesign for the website. So just thinking about
That's okay.
all the work that went in there. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
kind of
so
the
like we
passion.
have a big breakdown of what we do and how we work with schools that you can look through. And then we do have like, a donate button. It goes to PayPal. We'd be happy. Anyone who would love to do that. But there's also a form on there that people can fill out. So for like larger organizations, if they want to work with us, at sponsoring the awards, or if you're looking to attend the awards, you can find information on the website too about, we have like an Eventbrite page that you can get tickets at because they're currently on sale.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So nygamecritics.com. I'll
.com.
make
Yep.
sure to link it into the
Awesome.
description
Yeah.
below, but that's awesome. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the
Nope.
nitty gritty of NYVGCC since it's
Sure.
such a unique organization. Like I don't think there's many like it out there in North
No.
America, at least. So what's the work like at NYVGCC, and like how do you find students to do these write ups?
So I mean, the main thing that we do, so like you said, like students are doing the writing. If you go to nygamecritics.com, it's a little bit of two things. It's information about all the nonprofit work that we do. It is information about people who have, won awards at the New York Game Awards. But a big portion of it is actual like reviews and essays. And all of the writing on there, 95% of it is written by our students. So essentially, the way that most of our students get involved is if they have worked with us at their school or at one of the community organizations. We will do, we look through their work, we look through all that. And then if there's a really strong connection with their writing, we connect with them and they become paid interns for us. So like one of our latest reviews, I mentioned, we had a bunch of students who went to that Nintendo event in New York City. We have students who reviewed Baldur's Gate and Armored Core. So students who are successful in our programming then have the opportunity to sign on and work with us. And then we treat them like they are journalists. We give them, real deadlines. Some of them get review codes for games that aren't out yet, so that they have the
Ooh.
opportunity to really do that. We sometimes will then also dip into the pool of, games maybe that are already out. We are pretty heavy on doing a lot of different indie games, and give those kind of a highlight. And students can also like, pitch ideas of things that they would like to write about too. Um, so they can be involved. We have students who have gone to different conventions that they were interested in, and then went to the convention and did a write up about their experience there. So it's really open to looking at the creativity of what our students can do and what they want to do, but also really giving them that real world perspective from journalists who have gone through it and really understand how that industry is run.
It sounds like the students are the focus. Like
Yes,
their goal, your goal is just to make sure that their words and all their artistry is represented while commenting on their passion, which is video games.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So for certain ideas, like do the do the students come with games that they want to review, or do you have like a topic that like I don't know. Like maybe the news with Unity, like is there, would you assign that news story to a certain student, or are you only doing like stories that the students want to do?
Um, it definitely varies in certain senses. So, one of our more regular pieces on the website is called the Roundup. So, essentially, Ronald, one of our senior interns, will give kind of a recap of things that other students have posted on our website within the last week, but also we'll look through some of the greater news and then like highlight members of our members who are journalists, whether it's out at Kotaku or IGN, and we'll showcase what they wrote in that week. So in that case, we try to connect a little bit more to the current events, um, and it's kind of on a case by case basis. If a student comes up to us and says, I really want to play this game and really want to try it out, that opportunity is there. But in a lot of cases, too, we'll get different codes. We might have an indie company that asks us to write a review. So we'll get a code and we'll share it with a student and kind of go from there.
Cool. Okay. So free flowing. There's no like set agenda, I guess, on what you want to cover. It's for, to best serve the students. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have like a couple of months scheduled out, but
Mm.
it's definitely open to interpretation.
Awesome. Um, so are there any like exciting trends or development that you see as a executive director that's coming up in the games industry?
I mean, I think unfortunately, the trends seem a little less positive these days, or we're
Mm,
looking at a lot of people getting let go and all those sorts of things, which has been really rough. Um, but it's weird because as I'm looking at a lot of this news and looking at it from the point of view of having been a consumer, is it feels like this is the greatest year I think we've seen for games, maybe ever.
hmm hmm I
And,
agree.
it really makes it exciting to be like, well, this industry keeps growing and it looks like it's not going to stop. But then you have on that other side of the coin in this year where it looks like games can't stop, we have all these companies with these extreme layoffs and, a lot of people being let go in the industry. So, I'm wondering where those two things meet, because you would assume, right, the better we do, the more jobs and the more opportunity that there will be. But it
hmm
seems to be, a little bit of the opposite right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for those listening, maybe a little later or are not in the games journalism space. Yeah, like critically, sales wise as well. Like games have been firing on all cylinders, all
Overkill?
genres, all 12 months of the year. But at the same time, like there's been layoffs from every company. There's been like big controversies, like with Unity and their
Yep.
pricing structure. So definitely lots of news, uh,
Yeah.
both on the good and bad end. So it is, yeah, it is hard to say like what's going on, where is it going to settle, what does next year look like?
Yeah. I
It's
mean, it'll be
definitely
into
interesting.
a lot of these companies too that are doing, restructuring too, it seems. So,
hmm
what the next few years, will look like or be dependent on who's, taking charge in the industry.
Yeah, not to mention the big acquisition that's
Yep.
supposed to end up soon.
Yeah,
That's been a while too.
they've been talking about it for over a year now. At this point, I tune out anytime they're talking about the
Fair enough. Yeah.
Microsoft deal. I'll be like, I'll know when it happens.
Yeah, yeah. It is a lot of covering, a lot of nothing.
Uh-huh.
So how do you guys address the issues around like diversity in the games journalism space? We talk a lot about games journalism, but it is kind of it favors one voice over the other,
Yeah.
and like games journalism is not exclusive to this issue. A
Uh-huh.
lot of industries have this. So how do you address the issue of diversity and inclusion in your organization?
I mean, first and foremost, that's like where we are most, interested. The major goal is to, hope that these pathways that we are creating are helping create a more diverse games industry and games journalism industry as well. We work primarily in right underserved, mostly Black and brown neighborhoods. That's where we tend to see that, test scores are the lowest. Schools don't really, you know, not to say the schools aren't affected, but like I think what they're providing um, doesn't provide as much upward mobility as it should. I came from a classroom in a neighborhood like that, and it's really hard when you have a really large group of students, right? You have students who are well below grade level. You have students who are skating on by, and then you have students who are above grade level. And there's an expectation that you have to teach all those people. And, you try to figure that out, you try to balance that, but it takes more than just what happens in that one classroom. And it's partly why I, brought this program to my school. So those students who are doing really well, they're not getting challenged in your everyday class. So therefore, they're not technically learning. They're just, spitting out what they know.
Hmm.
So, we're hoping to work with those students and really give them a leg up and see, how capable they are and push them to do more than you're getting out of most classrooms these days. And then when you look on the opposite side of the spectrum, we're really hoping to incentivize those students who struggle with normal school. I get it. I don't want to read half of the assigned materials, but I don't have a choice on what is being assigned. So when we have that opportunity to engage kids with something like a video game and show them that storytelling can, exist in so many different ways.
Hmm.
And like I could go on for hours about just how uniquely built a video game is for narrative that cannot be captured by any game or book. There's a lot more to it that I think educators don't have, and this somehow deviated very far from diversity. But we're giving all of these tools to underserved neighborhoods, and people who wouldn't get this information, wouldn't get this opportunity, um, you know, a couple of years ago. So the more that we can connect with schools that are like in the United States, they're called Title One. I don't know what they're called by you, but it's where a large majority um, of your students come from like below or near the poverty line.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that we are giving to those people who need it the most, who are underrepresented. We have a very large number of young women who write for us. We found that
Oh, cool.
they're just like there's a little bit of just like they've just got such stronger maturity at a young age.
Yes,
But yeah,
yes.
like our three newest interns are three young women who were in my middle school, and they're exceptional at what they do.
Awesome.
So to give them the opportunity to really flex that muscle, beyond your standard writing an essay about a book, has been really really cool.
Yeah, I think the key word there is opportunity.
Uh-huh.
I think just even knowing that this kind of learning exists, or this kind of industry exists, might not be available to everyone for something that they are passionate about. A lot of kids are passionate about games and the narrative, and being able to bring those skills into their passions are is pretty amazing what you guys do.
Yeah, no, I'm loving every single day of it. I'm excited for when we're not at a point where we're working with a regular class yet this school year, but I'm excited to be able to go back and meet some kids and share all that kind of stuff with them in person again.
That's awesome. Speaking about the future, then, is there any exciting collaborations or projects that you want to share with the audience? You've mentioned the Game Awards. as well as collaborating with people like Stephen Totillo and Reggie. Is there anything like that coming up that you're excited for?
I mean, right now our big push is the New York Game Awards. We're going to be working with one or two New York City, a middle school and a high school in the fall, hoping that budgets, all of these sort of things, all the red tape you have to go through, but hoping all those things work out. And then, yeah, our big push right now is the New York Game Awards. So that's where majority of our focus is going. But the really great thing about the New York Game Awards is, like any other sort of game award thing you see, right? We are highlighting the best that there is, and if there's ever a year to talk about the best that's in games, it's this year.
Mhm.
But we get to bring those people together under one roof and share that love for games. We also have awards for journalism. Like I said, we had the teacher award last year, but we also connect all of that back to the nonprofit. So it's about more than just getting people excited about new games or highlighting games. The work that we're doing and all of the proceeds that we get from it help fund these classes and help connect us with more students, help us get more interns, help them get scholarship, and continue that cycle. So we're excited. We've also got a big Legend Award every year. So last year, Phil Spencer came in and
Oh,
received our Legend Award, met with our students. We have a really exciting legend that I can't divulge yet.
yeah,
There will be a press release sometime soon. But I am beyond excited for who we got this year. So
that's awesome.
yeah, there's a lot to
Cool.
look forward to there.
So January 16th, 2024, tickets on sale now.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. NYGameCritics.com. That sounds like a really cool event.
It's incredible. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect because I went last year as a nominee and just as a teacher,
Oh, yeah.
and once I was there, I was like, oh, this is legit.
Mhm.
We have like musicians from Saturday Night Live come in and help run
Oh,
part of the
wow.
show. We have comedians from The Daily Show who help
That's
write the
cool.
script and do a lot of it. So it's
Wow.
it's a professional run operation, but it's run by our members. Our interns help run the show. Um,
Mhm.
Reggie and Harold will be co-hosting, but our third co-host, who also helped last year, is one of our interns, Nikita Byfield, and she is incredible. Like, absolutely stole the show. You would think she's been doing this for like the last 20 years. So we're excited to have her back and help out with that as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Ah, you're selling me on it. I haven't been to New York before, but I
I
really want to
mean,
attend this award show.
it's a good trip.
That's awesome. So, jumping back to you a little bit,
Uh-huh.
do you have any advice for someone who might want to jump from one career to another? You jump from being a teacher to now being an executive director.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any advice for anybody looking to do a similar jump or chasing their passion, more or less?
I mean, I am very much. I was a very jumpy person in careers, um, but I think trying to think of the best way to word this because it's about to sound really negative, and that's not what I want to sound like. But I think within school systems, and I think just in society in general, we really put onus on like you need to know what you want as early as possible. And I think in a lot of cases, if you're capable of it, that's great. But I think for most people, that's not the truth, and it discourages, I think, a lot. Like you're like, oh, I'm going to be like a fireman when I grow up, and you're like 4 years old, like you don't know what that means, right?
Yeah.
So I think being open to opportunities and taking your passions and putting them into whatever it is that you're doing now can really open up a lot more doors than I think you realize. I never thought I'd be in this place. I originally, when I was in college, when I was in high school, I wanted to be an architect. Applied to a
Mm.
bunch of schools for architecture, and then by the time I was like getting ready to go, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And then I went to community college, and then I went from community college to a state school, and I got a degree in writing, and I was like, I'm going to be a writer. And I never loved any of that because I felt with a lot of those careers, they were very um, they were very much like self. what's the word I'm looking for here? It's all
Self.
about you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And for me, I always wanted to help someone else with it. And when I was in college, I was an editor for our writers journal or our writers association, but I never
Mhm.
submitted things. I just helped people do it. I worked
Hmm.
in our dorms and I helped advocate students for like what they need. I was the president of what was called the Residence Hall Association. Um, and it was in those moments that I like really was thriving. And I think in every step I felt so burdened to commit to one thing that I would close the doors to all those other things. So I was like,
Mm.
I'm going to be a writer. That's what I'm doing. But I never said to myself, oh, you're really good at helping people and managing a room of people who want to do advocacy. So I never looked into it because, like, no, you're going to be a writer. That's the thing that you're going to do. And then when I
Mhm.
learned that didn't work, I didn't know what next step to take. And then it took talking to friends, and they're like, you're really great at helping people. You're a good writer. Why don't you teach? And that ended up checking all the boxes. But that mentality of, well, this is forever now. And that's
Mm.
kind of where I was. But then as I started to, work with, this organization and learn about where those skills that I have can do the most and they can provide everything that I want, which is helping people but work with something I love. I struggled to, say yes to even applying and then
Mm.
eventually, went for it. So like a long way of jumping around that. But I think like not to be afraid of change and not to be
Mm.
afraid of trying something different because you know, failure happens and that's okay. There are always more opportunities. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be my long-winded advice.
No, that's fantastic. I definitely resonate with a lot of that as well. Like I jumped from being a sound designer to working with kids in counseling to now working as a community manager. But at the same time, all those skills, it's all my passions, and all the
Mhm.
skills definitely build off one another. So I definitely agree with you with that. Is definitely try something new, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah,
It's part of learning. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, there is something comforting in the like this is my lane, I'll stay in it. So
Yeah.
I can see I can see why people want to do that. But
There's a
yeah.
very more succinct or well put together version of kind of what I'm trying to say. Um, if you look up Conan O'Brien did a commencement address at Dartmouth, and it was like
Oh.
right after he got the Tonight Show taken away from him and
Oh.
he went on a tour and then he ended up like over at TBS. But he gave this like really wonderful speech because he had given one years earlier where he said no, like don't be afraid of failure. But then like in this new one after he like had failed, he was like, here's
Yeah.
everything I learned about failure. And it's both hilarious and like eye opening. Every time I've had a career change, I sit and I watch that and I'm like, okay, you can do this. I'm like, did this back in, was it February when I applied for this
Right.
job? So
Wow. So
take his
Conan
word,
O'Brien's speech to
take his word
Dartmouth.
over mine. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I'll try to find a video and link it down below. We're going to close out our show soon, but I wanted to ask you a little bit more about video games. I know
Great.
that's an easy ask for you.
Mhm.
Um, I guess, like, what is the one game, maybe in your childhood, maybe in your adult life, that really helped you reinforce your beliefs, maybe your career
Oh,
direction, your hobbies, relationships, and maybe even
interesting.
affected your passion for video games? You mentioned your top three.
Yeah.
You could pull from that again as well, but is there maybe another one that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about games in like a couple of different ways, like narrative in general, just being like a really good conduit for storytelling. That's always been a big part of it. But another aspect of what I love about games and the gaming community is just the way that they connect and you're able to build with people. My relationship with my brother, who like is my best friend, was built on video games. I will forever be player two. I'm always Luigi. I was always Tails. Um, but it was something that we were always able to do together. And it just kind of became this language of how we've been able, to connect. We play like there's like a guess the game like daily like thing from screenshots that we send to each other,
Oh, cool.
which is really fun. Or
Yeah.
like we have like a fantasy critics thing that we are checking in on and communicating with on a daily basis. But I think like that, and this is gonna be the strangest place to say where this started, but like this, it all started when I was around like 6 years old, and we played Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1 as a family.
Oh.
So it was like my brother was playing, and then like my mom and I would watch him play because I was both too young and too afraid to handle tank controls. And
Yeah.
to this day, I still cannot play Resident Evil 1 because
Yeah.
of the controls.
I have
But
to
like,
imagine it's a scary game.
and it's a horrifying game. But
Yeah.
like we would, go through playing the game, and then you'd open a chest and there'd be like this green gem. And then my mom would be like, mom and I would be like, there was a one-eyed tiger with a colored gem in his eye. And then we would like
Hmm.
go try to like find that, and like we would help with all the puzzles. And it was a really great way for us to like communicate around something like that, which was, really cool. Um, I mean, aside from that, it's like I love a good party game. My fiance and I play Mario Party maybe once a week,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can hate each other for a little bit, I guess.
Test it a little bit.
Right? Make sure it's still going to work out. And I love like all the kind of different. I want more collaborative co-op games. I think there's definitely not enough. Like I loved It Takes Two, and the
Oh,
way
yeah,
that
me
you
too.
were able to actually move through a game and actually tell a story that maybe I don't fully agree with all the messages in that story. But the way that you were able to collaborate as your two different characters with different abilities across, all these different play styles. And then I also love like anything of the ilk of like a Telltale where you make decisions and all of those things. Cause
Mhm.
we oh, I keep hitting this mic. We played Until Dawn together, where it's like you make those choices, you're in charge of different characters,
Yes.
or any of those kinds of spin-off ones. Where we're playing an Until Dawn replay this Halloween season, so we're
Oh,
excited
that's
for that.
perfect. That's perfect.
But
That's awesome. Okay, yeah. So, collaboration seems like the overall
yeah,
theme. Not just being your teammate, but also like being your opponent, or even playing a single player game and going through puzzles. It's all about the community and the relationship
yeah, and
aspect
like
of
and
that. Yeah.
sharing that story.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's. I mean, now I'm like circling back, but I think a really huge thing about why I love narrative in games is I think it's the best conduit for empathy, for you to
Mm.
actually feel and connect with a character, right? It's especially being an English teacher, right? There's that like Atticus Finch quote from To Kill a Mockingbird where like, you don't get to know someone until you walk around in their skin or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But that's literally what a game is, right? It
Hmm.
provides you that opportunity to move through a story and feel like it's happening to you, right? Like
Right.
my biggest criticism of Breath of the Wild was there wasn't enough story, but at the end of it, you were like, oh, look what I did. Like
Hmm.
like you reminisce on like, oh, I knocked down this tree and threw a sword on it, and a lightning bolt hit it, and like you remember that moment that you created, and even when you have a structure built story to walk through that story. And even though those decisions were predetermined for you, it feels like it's part of your story and you understand that a lot
Hmm.
more. And I think games have a really wonderful way of doing that. Like in Last of Us 2, like I fell in love with Abby, and everyone hates Abby, but I think when you look at everything from her point of view and you get to move through that story with her and see why she made decisions and how she connects with characters like Lev and all of that, you don't get that same feeling. Like I'm excited to see how they do that in the show, but I felt so emotionally connected to that story because I was going on this journey with that person and I got to
Hmm.
feel what they felt.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. It's going through the challenge with the character because games are hard sometimes. It's
Uh-huh.
going through that challenge. You build a new layer of empathy on not just their story, but also like the challenges they go through. Of course, it's not like one to one. You're not actually having to shoot something or jump
Mhm.
over a big cliff, but having that extra little bit of interaction really helps with that empathy piece. I think that's a really cool point you brought up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're gonna close out our show here. Thank you so much for your time. I do have two quick fun questions I want to
Okay.
ask. The first one is extra fun. So, say I grew up, level up, blew up, and now I make $1 bajillion every day, and I
Oh.
would love to fund your dream project.
Oh,
It could
okay.
be a video game. It could be maybe another organization like NYVGCC. What would it be? And yeah, what would it look like?
So I've had like the inklings of this strange idea in my head for a long time of I would love like a turn-based RPG that's set in a school where like instead
Oh,
of your classes being like mage or whatever, it's like your really stereotypical like 80s, 90s like popular kids, like football kid, like cheerleader,
mm,
and like those classes have some sort of like weaknesses against each other. Um is kind of like where like I love a good RPG, but I feel like and I love Baldur's Gate, but I feel like that this repetition of like these very specific classes that exist in everything, like I'd love a weird modernized twist on that that could really
hmm,
play into, you know, play into the real world in a
like
weird way.
yeah, like a mesh between Baldur's Gate, which is Dungeons and Dragons, with real life.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
your main character is like trying to get like a new club at your high school, but you've got to rally people from all these different
Mm,
factions to come together to get enough people to like let the club start.
cool. Okay, yeah, I can see that. What kind of art style would it be? Would it be like top down or uh third person, first person? That'd be interesting.
I feel like I'd like it to be like a Super Nintendo pixel art
Oh,
kind of deal. Maybe even doing like the Octopath sort of if we want to get real fancy with it,
yeah,
but I think like falling into like being like 80s early 90s like as an inspiration, like having it be sprite style would be probably
that's
to
cool.
its
Like a
benefit.
school sim.
Yeah.
Bringing it all back.
Hmm.
That's
Right.
awesome.
They say right what you know.
Yeah. And my last question for you for today is what is your one piece of wisdom to leave with the world?
Oh,
You dropped so many already,
I
so if you
did.
want to bring another one back up.
I feel like yeah, like I think I think in general it's just like say yes more and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think in life and moving through a lot, the thing that a lot of people and myself included in the majority of my life is like I was afraid to try a lot of new things, and so I didn't experience, you know, different career points that I probably could have a lot earlier in my life. And then like there was a pressure to always like look like you know everything so you don't ask questions. But
Mm,
like the person who asks the most questions becomes the most knowledgeable person in the end. So like I think that's the for students, for people who are, trying to move through a career, like there's no problems in asking questions and take on opportunities that you're given.
that's awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. Ask questions. Um, say yes. That's two great, fantastic pieces of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. I also really like your one earlier of talking about transitioning through careers and what
Mhm.
that's like. That so it all kind of loops back
Yeah,
together.
it's got a similar sentiment there, right?
That's awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from the East Coast over the power of
Absolutely.
the internet.
Yeah, thank
If
you.
if people want to find you, how can people get in contact with you and keep up with what you're doing?
If you look up any possible social media, you'll find me under Mr. Ryan OC, MRRYANOC. Um, yeah, that's me in most places. Most actively on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. And for what's the handle for New York Video Game Critics Circle?
NYVGCC cross
Awesome.
everything as well.
Awesome. And I'll link that below. Yeah. And listener, thank you so much for joining this conversation and learning about what Ryan's doing over in New York. I think it's super cool. I also have a soft spot for working with kids and trying to tie their passions of video games into their work. So thanks for joining me on that. If you liked what you listened to or didn't like what you listened to, leave a comment below what you thought of our conversation. If you really liked it, please leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe on all the channels that you're watching from or listening from. Join our Discord to keep up with all the news and our conversations with our members. And yeah, you can find me at SamsonXP on all the socials or at Grow Up Level Up for the podcast. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. It has been awesome chatting with you and learning about what you do. I was really enthralled with everything you had to share today.
Thanks, Samson. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Everybody else, see you next time.